intended for listeners who are blind, have low vision, or another print disability that makes reading, holding a book, or turning a page difficult or impossible. The content is copyrighted by the respective publishers. For more information, please visit us on the web at nfradioreading.org. The Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service now presents a reading of articles and features from USA Today for Thursday, February 26th, 2026. Your readers today are
Ken Drost
and Jim Duffy. And beginning with our front page, Trump's address, get ready to rumble. Fractured House Gallery signals a storm is ahead. From Susan Page, the Washington Bureau Chief and also of USA Today. He struck, oh boy, let me start over. He stuck to the script, mostly. President Donald Trump's signature has been his willingness to ad-lib his way through big speeches with bombastic rhetoric. But at the State of the Union address, February 24th, he read a statistics-heavy speech that was focused from the start on defending his economic record. It's a defense he needed to make, given that a majority of Americans say they are stressed by high prices and pessimistic about where the economy is going. The ratings on his stewardship of the economy, once an asset, have become a liability. So Trump ticked through positive economic statistics, took credit for reducing the price of everything from eggs to gas, and introduced a mother of two who, through a combination of Trump policies, had saved $5,000 in taxes last year. This is the golden age of America, Trump declared from the U.S. Capitol, saying he had inherited a nation in crisis. We have achieved a transformation like no one ever has seen before. It is a turnaround for the ages. That said, he didn't offer an empathetic, I feel your pain movement. He ridiculed affordability as a word concocted by Democrats. You caused that problem. You caused that problem, he said, looking at the Democratic side of the aisle. Then turning back to the Republican side, they knew their statements were a dirty, rotten lie. Now, it is true that the history of presidents trying to convince Americans the economy is better than it seems to them isn't a promising one. Ask Joe Biden. But Trump did present his strongest possible case, and with that, a warning to Democrats who have become accustomed to portraying the president as out of control and out of touch. If the State of the Union predicts the political weather ahead, the forecast from Trump's slashing attacks on Democrats and the Democrats' dismissive response was hard to miss. It's going to be a dark and stormy year. The president tried what amounted to a stunt to put Democrats on the spot. If you agree with the statement, then stand up and show your support. The first duty of the American government is to protect American citizens, not illegal aliens. The Democrats, who generally had remained stoic and silent, did not stand while Republicans joined in an ovation. Trump shook his head and gazed at the Democratic side with a combination of contempt and satisfaction. These people are crazy. I'm telling you, they're crazy, he said. We're lucky to have a country with people like this. Democrats were destroying our country, but we've stopped it. In the House Gallery, the president had invited family members of Americans who had been killed by unauthorized immigrants, a poignant reminder of his administration's success in tightening illegal crossings on the southern border. In the House Gallery, Democrats had invited more than a dozen women who have accused convicted predator Jeffrey Epstein of sexual abuse, a stinging reminder of his administration's failure to tamp down to a roiling global scandal. Dozens of congressional Democrats boycotted the president's speech, choosing instead to attend a People's State of the Union protest at the other end of the National Mall. Almost all of those who were in the House sat in what Democratic leader Hakeem Jeffries called silent defiance. There were a few exceptions. Texas Representative Al Green, who was ejected from the speech last year for shouting, brought a handwritten cardboard sign that read, "Black people aren't apes," a reference to a racist video Trump reposted, denigrating Barack and Michelle Obama. Green was escorted out again. And Minnesota Democratic Representative Ilhan Omar heckled the president as he defended his administration's controversial mass deportation campaign in Minneapolis. When Trump called undocumented immigrants murderers, she shouted, "You are the murderer," an apparent reference to protesters Renee Good and Alex Preddy, who were killed in clashes with ICE and Border Control agents. The split-in-half audience, the Republican side of the center aisle, repeatedly standing and cheering, the Democratic side sitting on their hands, their faces stony and disapproving, was a portrait of the nation's sharp political divide. There was no greater sign of Trump's night of discipline than his words directed at the Supreme Court, which last week outlawed Trump's unfettered imposition of tariffs in a 6-3 decision. He has denounced the decision, singling out two justices he had appointed, Amy Coney Barrett and Neil Gorsuch. But when he arrived for the speech, he made a point of shaking hands with the four black-robed justices in the front row of the hall, including Chief Justice John Roberts, who wrote the decision, and Justices Elena Kagan, Brett Kavanaugh, and Barrett. A very unfortunate ruling, he said, perhaps the mildest description he had made since it was handed down. He didn't single out any of the justices, neither criticizing Barrett nor thanking Kavanaugh, who dissented and shrugged off the decision as no more than an annoyance. He insisted he would use other processes to impose the tariffs that have been his favorite economic sword. It's saving our country, the kind of money we're taking in, he said. He also read carefully drafted language when he discussed the confrontation with Iran, which he has deployed a massive U.S. armada amid negotiations to limit Tehran's enrichment of nuclear material. My preference is to solve this problem through diplomacy, he said. But one thing is certain, I will never allow the world's #1 sponsor of terror to have nuclear weapons. Both sides of the aisle were focused not on grand policy, but on gritty politics. The midterm elections in November could complicate the remainder of Trump's presidency and give Democrats a base of power after 2 years out in the cold. What a difference a year has made. In his 2025 address to a joint session of Congress, the freshly inaugurated president blamed Biden for the nation's problems and pressed for passage of the big, beautiful bill that would extend the massive tax cuts from his first term. He would triumphantly sign that bill on the 4th of July. Today, he has never been more embattled, not even during the 2 impeachment trials of his first term, given that the GOP-controlled Senate seemed all but guaranteed to acquit him. His approval rating now, as credible national polls, has sagged below 40%, with 6 in 10 Americans expressing disapproval of the job he's doing. The president's standing has sunk in particular among some of the voters crucial to winning a second term, including younger voters and Hispanics. Even so, Trump hasn't lost his swagger. He stayed on offense. He insisted that no president in history had ever scored more successes than he has. Meanwhile, Democrats are increasingly confident they will flip more than the 3 seats they need to regain control of the House in November. That wouldn't give them the ability to pass legislation over Trump's veto, but they could convene hearings, issue subpoenas, and launch investigations into his administration. A dark and stormy year ahead, indeed. Bundle up, or maybe buckle up.
Democrats respond to the State of the Union. Virginia governor hits Trump on failing on affordability. Michael Loria of USA Today writes, Virginia Governor Abigail Spanberger, tasked with delivering the Democratic response to President Donald Trump's State of the Union address, blasted the president as unfocused on improving the lives of Americans and instead enriching himself, his family, his friends. Is the president working for you? We all know the answer is no, Spanberger said in an address from Williamsburg, Virginia. Now, that happened to be the site of the early English settlement linked to the founding of the United States. Who benefits from his rhetoric, his policies, his actions, the short list of laws he's pushed through this Republican Congress? Somebody must be benefiting, she continued. He's enriching himself, his family, his friends. The scale of the corruption is unprecedented. Spanberger hit Trump for failing to make life more affordable for most Americans, sending armed, masked immigration agents into the streets, resulting in the fatal shootings in Minnesota of 2 U.S. citizens. and weakening America's position against rivals such as Russia and China. Over the years, especially the last year, through DOGE, mass firings, and the appointment of deeply unserious people to our nation's most serious positions, our president has endangered the long, storied history of the United States of America being a force for good. The governor said, in an apparent reference to appointees who lack the usual qualifications, like FBI Director Kash Patel and Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard. So I'll ask again, is the president working to keep Americans safe, both at home and abroad? We all know the answer is no. Spanberger's address was broadcast shortly after Trump wrapped up a record-breaking 1 hour and 47-minute address before Congress in Washington. The governor's speech clocked in at about 12 minutes. The president opened and closed his speech by declaring the country was experiencing the golden age of America as it celebrates its 250th birthday. Spanberger directly addressed Trump's talking points, saying he lied, scapegoated, distracted. The governor closed by addressing the upcoming 2026 midterm elections, where she forecast that widespread backlash to the president's policies seen in 2025 and the start of 2026 would translate into the president getting his comeuppance at the ballot box. Now, here's the special thing about America on our 250th anniversary. We know better than any nation what is possible when ordinary citizens, like those who once dreamed right here in this room, reject the unacceptable and demand more of their government, Spanberger said, referencing nationwide student walkouts over immigration enforcement, among other protests. I am inspired by their bravery, but I am sick that it is even necessary. And Americans across the country are taking action. They are going to the ballot box. With their votes, they are writing a new story, a more hopeful story. So who's Abigail Spanberger? Well, she's the 75th governor of Virginia. Her landslide gubernatorial win last year made her the first woman elected to Virginia's highest office, a win for the National Democratic Party in a year dominated by Republicans. The lawmaker was elected to the state's top seat in November after defeating Republican Lieutenant Governor Winsome Earl Sears. Born Abigail Ann Davis in New Jersey, she moved to Virginia as a child, proud product of Virginia Public Schools. She received her bachelor's degree from the University of Virginia, according to Spanberger's online bio. She worked as a CIA officer before being elected to Congress from Virginia's 7th Congressional District in 2018 and winning 3 consecutive terms. She and her husband, Adam Spanberger, and their 3 daughters live in Henrico County, where the state capital of Richmond is located.
Returning to our front page, shopping cart roundup targets urban blight. New laws impose fines and try to curb theft. From the day of Yancey Bragg of USA Today. As Julian Montague drove around Buffalo, New York, he noticed them everywhere. Tipped over at intersections, crushed by snowplows in parking lots, waiting alone at bus stops. Shopping carts had wandered away from their stores. Montague, an artist, began photographing the wayward carts and eventually developed a complex classification system that sorted his sightings into more than 30 different categories. A lot of people, the shorthand for shopping carts, they think of homeless people, appropriating them and using them, according to Montague. And that is something that happens, but it's such a small percentage of the activity that takes place. Montague's book, The Stray Shopping Carts of Eastern North America, A Guide to Field Identification, humorously and rigorously documented a social problem that has been plaguing retailers and local governments for decades. Lawmakers and residents say the abandoned carts are a blight on neighborhoods, can cause environmental damage, and are a costly burden to remove. Despite some pushback, a growing number of municipalities are cracking down on shopping cart theft. You're listening to a reading of today's USA Today on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time is 12:15. Continuing, in Federal Way, Washington, taking a cart off store property can result in a $50 fine. California cities can now charge businesses for the hassle of rounding up their carts. And if retailers in Phoenix don't adequately address the issue, they'll have to install GPS trackers on their carts. These carts, often left behind without retailers having any meaningful retrieval plan, are not just annoyances, Phoenix City Council member Patty Guardado said at a September meeting. They obstruct sidewalks, clutter public spaces, and contribute to the deterioration of our community's appearance and quality of life. Many retailers voluntarily hire cart retrieval companies to find and return their lost property, but often the burden of tracking down loose carts falls on local governments. Phoenix's Neighborhood Services Department spent more than $58,000 to collect over 7,800 carts in fiscal year 2024. The city's cart retrieval program, which was formalized in October, can charge stores as much as $50 per cart returned to them. Though Republican state lawmakers are looking to stop Arizona cities from fining businesses for the service. In Federal Way, one city employee is tasked with driving around to hunt for abandoned carts and respond to sightings reported through a city app, according to Keith Niven, the city's community development director. The city charges retailers $25 to return each cart, and in 2025, stores paid more than $18,000 for the service, Niven said. But many business owners chose to let the city dispose of the carts, which are either recycled, taken to the dump, or donated. In recent years, Federal's Way so-called shopping cart jail has filled up less often, and retailers seem to be doing a better job at keeping their carts on their property, according to Nevin. But the constant turnover among staff can present a challenge. Eventually, they figure out that they can't just leave their shopping carts in the parking lot overnight and then get things better. And then things get better, let me repeat. But then that manager ends up being either relocated or they get another job, Livin said, starting a cycle all over again. In California, a bill sponsored by State Senator Dave Cortese that allows cities to recoup the cost of cart retrieval from businesses went into effect in January. Cortese, whose family owns a shopping center, said the state has been looking for ways to address the cart problem since he first joined the San Jose City Council more than 25 years ago, and it's too soon to tell if they'll ever succeed. Excuse me. It's possible we'll still be overwhelmed by shopping carts even after this bill, according to Cortese. Only time will tell. Multiple cities have passed ordinances requiring retailers to equip their shopping carts with locking devices or implement other security measures to stop carts from getting out in the first place. Stores have sought out technology to prevent cart theft at least since Gatekeeper Systems began offering it in 1999, according to the company's chief commercial officer, Craig Greenberg. I was a retailer before Gatekeeper, and cart loss was a very costly and challenging problem that had a high impact on the shopper experience, according to Greenkeeper. Gatekeeper Systems sells smart wheel technology, which automatically locks the wheels of a cart when it leaves a boundary designed to use radio frequencies. Some retailers, most prominently Aldi, have invested in other kinds of cart locking systems that require a quarter to be deposited in order to access the cart. Phoenix leaders passed an ordinance requiring retailers to equip their shopping carts with such locking devices or hire a cart retrieval company in a unanimous vote as residents voiced growing frustrations with the eyesore. If the city finds that it's still rounding up a lot of carts from a certain retailer, the store will be required to have its contractor collect carts twice a week. Should the problem persist, the shop will have to place GPS trackers on its carts and collect them daily. Stores had to confirm they complied with the new law by January 15th or faced penalties ranging from $500 for a first violation and $1,000 for the third violation within 3 years. In some municipalities, like Prince George's County, Maryland, penalties are even stricter. Retailers there that have more than 20 shopping carts must take proactive steps to prevent their carts from being stolen or face a fine of $2,000 per day. That shopping cart law went into effect in August, but so far enforcement by county officials and compliance among retailers have been lax, according to County Council member Wanika Fisher, who proposed the bill. The county executive's office did not immediately respond to a request for comment from USA Today. My hope is for them to roll out the enforcement soon, but I'm working with the county executive to make sure it happens, she said. But they're definitely not in compliance. Fisher and other lawmakers have faced pushback from retailers over the fines and the cost of implementing card security measures. It's a difficult situation, Greenberg said, because if you think about it, it's very unfortunate. They are fining a retailer for someone stealing their property. In addition to targeting retailers, some locales have sought to penalize people who take carts, raising concerns about the impact on vulnerable populations. Those ordinances aren't new. Former New York Governor Andrew Cuomo signed such a bill into law in 1988, according to the Associated Press, authorizing fines of up to $100 for people who took shopping carts at the time. But city councils continue to pass them, including local leaders in Ogden, Utah, and Federal Way, who approved $50 fines for people caught with store carts. Federal Way council member Hoang V. Tran, who said he was once homeless, called the ordinance mean-spirited when it was passed in 2022, the Federal Way Mirror reported. I feel like we are targeting a group of vulnerable people in the community, he said. I feel like this ordinance is intended to drive homeless people out of the city without providing any meaningful help. Excuse me. The Federal Way Police Department has issued 450 tickets since the ordinance took effect, but it's not clear how many of those tickets were issued to homeless people because the department does not track that information, spokesperson Kyle Buchanan said. Since the ordinance went into effect, we have seen a drastic decrease in the number of shopping carts left around the city, according to Buchanan. I rarely see them in public anymore when driving. Some officials have tried to mitigate the impact on the homeless population before a new shopping cart related ordinance went into effect. The police department in Las Cruces, New Mexico, held shopping cart collection drives, allowing people in possession of a cart to return it free of consequences, and offered limited space for homeless people to temporarily store belongings they might have previously kept in shopping carts. More than 130 carts were collected at the drives, and local businesses helped community members replace their carts with luggage or rolling carts that were purchased with donated funds. In Las Cruces, the punishment for cart theft can be stiff. Anyone who takes or abandons a shopping cart can be convicted of a petty misdemeanor. Instead of jail time, a judge may order the perpetrator to perform community service, which could include receiving counseling, treatment for substance abuse disorders, or mental health issues. But given that theft is already illegal, lawmakers who want to address the cart problem should focus more on the underlying issues that lead people to keep their belongings in shopping carts, said Jesse Rabinowitz, Communications and Campaign Director at the National Homeless Law Center. This is another way that people experiencing homelessness who are primarily black and brown are agreeing to be arrested, ticketed, locked up, and further disconnected from the housing and supports they need, Rabinowitz said. Whether intentionally or not, these laws will have disproportionate impact against folks who are just trying to survive and sleep outside.
Moving on to page 4, Horatio is the world's first Category 5 cyclone. The storm reminds us that hurricane season is looming. Doyle Rice of USA Today writes, "We may be months away from the start of the Atlantic hurricane season, but tropical cyclones are spinning somewhere on the planet. Indeed, on the other side of the world, Tropical Cyclone Horatio became the world's first Category 5 tropical cyclone of 2026 on Monday afternoon, February the 23rd, topping out with 160 mile-per-hour winds over the warm waters of the remote South Indian Ocean. This from meteorologist Jeff Masters on the Yale Climate Connections blog. Forecasters from the Joint Typhoon Warning Center say that Horatio has peaked in intensity and will steadily weaken as it moves southward over cooler waters. Fortunately, Masters said Horatio is far from any land areas and is only a threat to marine interests. While not a threat to land, Horatio is a reminder that the 2026 Atlantic hurricane season is only 3 months away. So what might it bring? Forecasters say that an oncoming El Nino will likely play a significant role in the strength and activity of the 2026 hurricane season, both in the Atlantic and Pacific basins. El Nino, a natural warming of tropical Pacific Ocean water, usually reduces the number of hurricanes in the Atlantic, especially in the Caribbean and the Gulf, according to Andy Hazelton, associate scientist with the University of Miami. At the same time, El Nino's impacts also often include more active hurricane seasons in the eastern and central Pacific Oceans. El Nino tends to lead to more active Pacific seasons, though the details of where the warmest water sets up, eastern versus central Pacific, may determine which basin is most above normal, according to Hazelton. Horatio is the first Category 5 in the southern hemisphere since Cyclone Errol achieved that status off northwestern Australia April 16th of last year. The 1990 to 2025 average yearly number of Category 5 storms globally was 5.3. There were 5 in last year: Hurricanes Melissa, Erin, and Humberto in the Atlantic, Ragasa in the Northwest Pacific, and Cyclone Errol in the South Indian. Interestingly, even though El Nino tends to reduce Atlantic hurricanes, Hazelton said that the last 3 Category 5s to hit the U.S., Camille in '69, Andrew in '92, and Michael in 2018, all occurred during hurricane seasons as the ocean was transitioning to weaker El Nino conditions. To clarify, hurricanes, typhoons, and cyclones are all the same type of storm, known collectively as tropical cyclones. They have different names depending on which basin they form in. Hurricanes form in the Atlantic basin, along with the eastern and the central Pacific basins. Typhoons form in the western Pacific, while cyclones, also known as tropical cyclones, form in the Indian Ocean and the South Pacific. Unlike the North Atlantic hurricane season, which runs from June through November, the South Indian Ocean cyclone season typically runs from November through April, similar to the Southern Hemisphere cyclone season near Australia. According to the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, cyclones can technically form all year round in the Indian Ocean, but November through April is when those conditions are most favorable, meaning warm ocean water and lower wind shear.
NASA moves to delay launch of Artemis II moon mission again. The flow of helium is the latest problem for the mission. From Eric Lagata of USA Today, NASA's historic Artemis II moon mission has had yet another setback. A successful pre-launch fueling test for the rocket, due to propel 4 astronauts on their way, gave the space agency cause to celebrate. But a day after the test ended, those spirits were dampened when ground teams discovered that not all was well with the towering Space Launch System rocket. This time it wasn't a leak that ailed the rocket, but not enough flow of helium to the spacecraft's upper stage. The discovery of the issue marks the latest setback for NASA's reinvigorated lunar program, which aims to return Americans to the moon's surface for the first time since the Apollo era. Artemis II, the first human spaceflight under NASA's multi-billion-dollar program, appeared on track for a March liftoff after the mission last slipped from February following the first pre-flight fueling test. Under the mission, 3 Americans and 1 Canadian are due to fly around the moon ahead of a future moon landing. This will almost assuredly impact the March launch window, NASA Administrator Jared Isaacman said in a February 21st post on social media site X. You're listening to a reading of today's USA Today on the Niagara Frontier Radio reading service. The time is 12:30. Continuing, it's been difficult to keep track of all the latest updates, delays, and potential launch windows for Artemis II. Here's everything to know. When is the launch date? Originally slated for liftoff in February, the NASA officials initially delayed the Artemis II moon launch from the Kennedy Space Center near Cape Canaveral, Florida, by about a month. The Artemis II mission slipped to no earlier than March the 6th, after NASA's first elaborate launch day rehearsal ended with the discovery of a hydrogen leak within the 322-foot Space Launch System rocket's core stage. Now, though, NASA simply hopes to preserve launch opportunities in April, since it's apparent engineers have more work to do on the SLS. I understand people are disappointed by this development, Isaacman said in a follow-up online post. That disappointment is felt most by the team at NASA, who have been working tirelessly to prepare for this great endeavor. Ground teams at NASA observed interrupted flow of helium February 21st to the rocket's interim cryogenic propulsion stage. Helium flow is required for launch, as the upper stage uses it to maintain proper environmental conditions for the engine and to pressurize propellant tanks. While the system worked during the most recent fueling test, known as a wet dress rehearsal, teams were not able to properly flow helium during normal operations and reconfigurations, NASA said in a blog post. The discovery came on the heels of an otherwise successful wet dress rehearsal in which the SLS was fueled and later drained of the 700,000 gallons of liquid oxygen and liquid hydrogen. The test, meant to simulate launch day operations, ended February 20th on a high note, after NASA teams didn't encounter the liquid hydrogen leaks that plagued the first such demonstration. Will the rocket need to be rolled out from the launch pad? The Space Launch System will soon be departing the launch pad, where it's been vertical since mid-January, as NASA is planning to roll the giant rocket back to the agency's vehicle assembly building, where spacecraft are prepared for launch. The rollback could happen soon, NASA said. An exact time to conduct the 4-mile trek has not been announced. While a number of factors could be causing the problem with the rocket, accessing and remediating any of these issues can only be performed in the VAB, Isaacman said. When will NASA say more about what's next for Artemis II? NASA officials have indicated plans to host a news conference in the coming days to discuss the status of Artemis II. Please expect a more extensive briefing later this week as we continue the path forward, not just for Artemis II, but for subsequent missions to ensure NASA meets the President's vision to return to the moon, and this time to stay, Isaacman concluded in his online statement. Who will be on the mission? The crew of Artemis II includes NASA astronauts Reid Wiseman, Victor Glover, and Christina Cook, as well as Canadian Space Agency's Jeremy Hansen. Following the successful pre-launch fueling test, the astronauts had re-entered quarantine February 20th at the Johnson Space Center in Houston to avoid exposure to any illnesses, NASA said. But amid the latest setback, the crew members once again exited quarantine and will remain in Houston until a new target launch date is about 2 weeks away. What are NASA's Artemis missions? NASA's Artemis program is in the agency's ambitious campaign to return Americans to the surface of the moon for the first time since the Apollo era came to an end in 1972. Artemis reflects NASA's Moon to Mars approach to getting the first humans to the red planet. In years ahead, NASA's Artemis campaign aims to launch a series of crewed missions to establish a continuous human presence on the moon, with a lunar settlement on the South Pole. That's where water ice, thought to be abundant in the region, could be used for drinking, breathing, and a source of hydrogen and oxygen for rocket fuel. The Artemis 2 astronauts won't be landing, but will instead circle the moon on a 10-day trip to test systems and hardware for future expeditions to the surface. The Orion capsule the crew will pilot, built by Lockheed Martin, is due to travel about 4,700 miles beyond the far side of the moon, taking its passengers the farthest humans have ever ventured in space before returning to Earth. While NASA tested its spacecraft during Artemis 1 mission in 2022, Artemis 2 will be the first time that the 322-foot-tall SLS rocket and the Orion capsule will fly with humans aboard. And when would a moon landing happen? A moon landing would take place during Artemis 3, which President Trump has signaled he wants to see happen before the end of his second term. The astronauts for that mission have not yet been selected.
Bill Gates apologizes for his ties to Epstein. The report acknowledges mistake to employees. Bart Jansen of USA Today writes, Gates took responsibility for his actions over ties to convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein in a town hall meeting with employees of the Gates Foundation, the group said in a statement. Gates answered questions at the twice-a-year meeting, February 24, on a range of issues, including the release of the Epstein files, the foundation said. In the town hall, Bill spoke candidly, addressing several questions in detail, and took responsibility for his actions. The statement came in a response to a Wall Street Journal report that said Gates had apologized to staff at the event over his ties to Epstein. Documents released by the Justice Department have indicated Gates and Epstein met repeatedly to discuss expanding the Microsoft founder's philanthropic efforts. The meetings came after Epstein was imprisoned for 13 months, ending in 2009, for a conviction on state charges in Florida of soliciting the prostitution involving a minor. Epstein died by suicide in 2019 while in custody on federal charges. According to the Journal report, Gates told staff it was a huge mistake to spend time with Epstein and bring Gates Foundation executives into meetings with the sex offender. The report cited a recording of Gates' comments in the town hall. I apologize to other people who are drawn into this because of the mistake that I made, he said. The Journal added, Gates also acknowledged 2 affairs with Russian women that Epstein later discovered, but he said they did not involve Epstein's victims. I did nothing illicit. I saw nothing illicit, Gates told the staff, according to the report. Justice Department documents from the criminal investigation that have been released publicly include pictures of the Microsoft founder posing with women whose faces are redacted. Gates had said his relationship with Epstein was limited to philanthropy-related discussions and acknowledged it was just a mistake to meet with him. According to the Journal, Gates told the foundation staff the images were pictures Epstein asked him to take with Epstein's assistants after their meetings. To be clear, I never spent any time with victims, the women around him, Gates added, according to the report. Other documents showed Epstein tried to mediate a falling out between Gates and an advisor, Boris Nikolic, in 2013. Epstein wrote an email to himself saying Gates and his aides were mistreating him despite a friendship so close that Gates once asked for antibiotics to treat a sexually transmitted infection he had contracted from Russian girls. His former wife, Melinda French Gates, announced their divorce in 2021 after 27 years of marriage. She left the Gates Foundation in 2024. Whatever questions remain, there of what I don't. I can't even begin to know all of it. Those questions are for those people and for even my ex-husband. They need to answer to those things, not me, French Gates said in the February 5 episode of NPR's Wildcard podcast. The Gates Foundation said earlier in February that it did not make any payments to Epstein or employ him at any time. The billionaire canceled plans to attend India's AI Impact Summit hours before his scheduled keynote speech, February 19. The Gates Foundation, chaired by Gates and started by him and his then wife in 2000, is one of the world's largest funders of global health initiatives.
Iron River fueled El Mencho's weapons cache. Firearms from the U.S. are common in Mexico. From Lauren Villagran of USA Today. After the Mexican military killed drug cartel kingpin Nemesio Ruben Azuguera Cervantes, widely known as El Mencho, officials detailed the weapons recovered in the firefights. The stockpile included a rocket-propelled grenade launcher, 10 long arms, handguns, and grenades, officials said. Mexico Defense Minister Ricardo Travilla Trejo said that, as with other Mexican crime scenes, about 80% of the recovered weapons were bought in the United States and smuggled into Mexico. The details were shared in a February 23rd news conference, a day after the killing of El Mencho. Gun ownership in Mexico is tightly restricted. There is only one military-run gun store in the country, in Mexico City, where sales are strictly regulated. But easy access to guns in the United States has created an iron river of firearms into Mexico's black market. Our gun laws and gun industry practices fuel an iron river of firearms trafficking that supplies Mexican drug cartels and other criminal elements in the region, Senator Dick Durbin, Democrat from Illinois, said in 2025, announcing a bill he hoped would rein in gun smuggling. Statistics from the U.S. Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives roughly back up Mexico's figures, that the vast majority of weapons in Mexico come from the United States. Countries around the world asked the ATF to trace weapons found at their crime scenes. The ATF said 74% of the guns used in a crime were linked to a U.S. purchaser from 2017 to 21. The details behind gun trace data are kept out of public view by a congressional rule known as the Tired Amendment, passed in 2003 to shield gunshots from scrutiny. Each year, the ATF provides a simple count of the guns recovered in Mexico that had been bought in the United States. But a massive leak of Mexican military intelligence in 2024 revealed trace data on U.S. sold firearms that showed where and how they were purchased. Mexican officials are particularly concerned about Arizona and Texas big box stores near the border, such as Academy Sports Plus, Outdoors, and Cabela's, because of how often they sell multiple rifles in a single transaction. Academy, for example, sold 727 of the guns recovered in Mexico from 2020 to 22, and Cabela's sold 215 over the same period, according to court records. It's illegal to smuggle lawfully purchased firearms out of the United States. In one recent prosecution, the Department of Justice charged a father-son duo with attempting to drive more than 300 rifles and pistols, plus ammunition and magazines over the Mexican border. The guns were plastic wrapped and stashed behind a false wall in a utility trailer. Disrupting the illegal flow of weapons into Mexico is a key part of our whole-of-government approach to dismantling the cartels, Attorney General Pamela Bondi said in a news conference at the time. Earlier in February, the ATF announced it had seized 4,359 firearms and 648,975 rounds of ammunition bound for Mexico since January 2025, part of the Trump administration's efforts to dismantle the networks that arm violent criminals. The southbound flow of weapons and cash from the United States to Mexico has historically been hard to combat, in part because smugglers move in what the Mexican government has called tráfico de hormigas, like ants over the border, trafficking small quantities at a time. Mexico's National Guard randomly searches vehicles at ports of entry. U.S. Customs and Border Protection occasionally conducts southbound vehicle checks before they cross into Mexico. Mexico has long blamed U.S. firearms for thousands of deaths in the country each year. The Mexican government in 2021 sued U.S. gun makers, claiming they were aiding and abetting the trafficking of firearms south of the border. In 2025, the Supreme Court ruled unanimously against the Mexican government in its attempt to hold U.S. gun makers liable for violence and atrocities committed by Mexican drug cartels. You're listening to a reading of today's USA Today on the Niagara Frontier Radio reading service. The time is 12:45.
Moving into the money line section, fair value home case is going to go before the High Court. Can the government steal equity from a seized site? Maureen Grope of USA Today writes, a Michigan family lost their ranch-style home to cover $2,242 in disputed and unpaid taxes. The government sold the place for a song, $76,008 at public auction, before the buyer flipped it for $195,000. A 2023 Supreme Court ruling meant Isabella County had to give Michael Pung's family what was left after selling the house and settling the tax bill. But his attorneys argue in a case the court will hear on February 25 that it's not enough. They say compensation should be based on the seized home's fair market value, noting that it had been appraised at nearly $200,000. Unless the High Court intervenes, again, lawyers for the family say government has no reason to sell property for anything more than the amount of taxes owed. Whatever else above that, they're no longer allowed to keep, so that they don't care. Attorney Philip L. Ellison said in a briefing about the case by the Pacific Legal Foundation, which is helping to represent the family. The Libertarian Public Interest Law Firm brought the previous Supreme Court challenge to what they call equity theft after a 94-year-old grandmother in Minnesota lost her property to foreclosure. The taxpayer must render unto Caesar what is Caesar's, but not more. Chief Justice John Roberts wrote in the court's unanimous decision, siding with the grandmother. But the ruling didn't get into whether states can sell the property for far less than what it's worth. The AARP called the price the county got for the Pung's house shockingly low. The advocacy group, which filed a brief supporting the challenge because of its concern that older Americans may be particularly vulnerable to tax foreclosure, also pointed to a 2011 tax lien auction in Poughkeepsie, New York. A company paid $4,825 for the home of a widow whose dementia prevented her from paying $4,242 in taxes, even though she had the money, according to the AARP. The home was assessed at $132,000, and the purchaser subsequently sold it for $115,000. Since 2023, some states, Oregon, Massachusetts, and Maine, now require seized homes to first be marketed by a real estate broker at fair market value. That shows that there are alternatives to a fire sale auction, which would allow governments to collect what they're owed and the homeowner to keep most of the home's value. Another powerful interest group, the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, has also weighed in. The government is incentivized to sell quickly and on the cheap, frequently resulting in catastrophic losses for property owners. A main legal issue in the case is the takings clause in the Fifth Amendment, which bars the government from taking private property without just compensation. The Pungs also argue that property sold for a fraction of its value to cover a tax bill is an excessive fine under the Eighth Amendment. So what exactly is fair market value for a foreclosed house? Attorneys from Fort Isabella County said that calls for governments to base compensation on a property's fair market value, ignore the fundamental differences between a market sale and a willing seller and buyer, and a forced sale on foreclosure. Property in a foreclosure is simply worth less, the county said in a filing. The Constitution does not entitle delinquent taxpayers to hypothetical pre-foreclosure values rather than actual sale proceeds, according to Michigan and 10 other states in a brief supporting Isabella County. Now, Hennepin County, the local government at the center of the 2023 case from Minnesota, said the properties it recently sold through an online public auction went for about 40% of their estimated market. The Wisconsin Counties Association told the court the state has already taken steps to comply with the court's 2023 decision, and another change would likely require a wholesale reevaluation of Wisconsin's tax foreclosure statutes. After the Supreme Court's 2023 ruling, nearly every state amended its laws, according to the Pacific Legal Foundation. There were a lot of states that were doing a lot of bad things, said Christina Martin, a foundation lawyer who argued the case. In most states, people are better off than they were before. But the libertarian public interest law firm recently identified ways, it said, Alabama, Arizona, Michigan, New Jersey, and New York are engaging in shadow equity theft. Those include requiring property owners to file a claim with the government for any surplus proceeds from the tax sale. Homeowners may need to make that request even before the property is sold, and the timeline for filing a claim can be compressed. The Pacific Legal Foundation in recent months has asked the Supreme Court to get involved in multiple cases from Michigan involving such bureaucratic traps. The court has so far declined to hear those appeals. In the Isabella County case about fair market value that the court will hear, as a matter of fact, on February 25th, the Justice Department argues a property owner can challenge whether there was insufficient notice of a sale or a lack of opportunity for bidding. But if the sale was conducted fairly and the homeowner received the surplus, that's all the Constitution requires, according to the department. The best measure of the property's value is the price obtained at the foreclosure sale itself, as long as the sale is conducted fairly, the Justice Department said in a filing previewing the argument it's going to make during the oral arguments. Like any debtor, a taxpayer who wishes to avoid the foreclosure process can just pay the outstanding debt.
More businesses are adding to credit card fees in this year, 2026. From David Bruce of the Erie Times News and the USA Today Network. Jason Lavery faced a difficult decision last spring. He could raise the price of drinks and food at Lavery Brewing Company or add a surcharge to all credit card payments. Like many other small business owners across the country, Lavery added a surcharge. Credit card customers now pay an additional 1.5% plus 20 cents. We paid $40,000 in credit card fees in 2025, Lavery said. Our operating margins were getting tighter, so the choices were to raise prices across the board or add the surcharge. We didn't think it was fair for customers who pay with cash to raise prices, so we implemented the surcharge. Businesses are always looking at ways to protect their bottom line, and lately that includes how customers pay for their items or services. Many, like Lavery Brewing, have added credit card surcharges, while a few have stopped accepting credit cards altogether. Others have gone a different route and no longer accept cash. The percentage of businesses that add a surcharge for credit card purchases has increased to 35%, according to the J.D. Power 2026 U.S. Merchant Services Satisfaction Survey. The percentage of businesses that accept credit cards has risen to 96%. Going cashless saves money because employees don't have to spend time counting and depositing up to $50,000 after a hockey game or concert, said Gus Pine, Erie Events Executive Director. But the main reason for the change was to serve more concession stand customers. The main problem we saw when I first came here was speed of service. Handling up to 5,000 customers at one time at our concession stands, Pine said. It was always the number one concern. People cited in our annual fan survey. The company no longer needs a second worker at each register to handle cash, and the buying process is more streamlined, according to Pine. You can see the difference if you walk onto the concourse between periods of an Erie Otters game, Pine said. The waiting times for concessions are much less. Natalia Voites doesn't have to worry about long lines of customers. The owner of Natalia's Sewing Center usually see her customers one at a time. They also remember to bring cash. Voites hasn't accepted credit cards since she opened the business in 2014. I figured that I would have to pay the credit card companies a fee, so I didn't accept them, according to Voites. My customers are mostly regulars, and they know that I don't take credit cards. For new customers, Voites has two signs taped to her front counter. One has the international no symbol placed over the pictures of various credit card companies, while the other tells people that she doesn't accept credit cards. If a customer doesn't have cash or a personal check for a repair or alteration, Voites said she can make a deal with them. I asked for a deposit of up to $20, she said. I haven't had any complaints. Neither have Lavery or Pine. Lavery doesn't recall a single customer complaining about the credit card surcharge since it was implemented. Our average check is for $29, which means an 87-cent surcharge, Lavery said. Nobody seems to care. Honestly, we haven't received even a handful of complaints, according to Pine. We still accept cash at the box office, and when we went cashless elsewhere, we purchased a bunch of prepaid Visa cards for people to buy and use for concessions if they didn't have a credit card or debit card. We are still on that initial batch of prepaid cards. Pine said it was an easier decision for Erie Events to go cashless than it would be for a retail business. The wave of customers who visit the concession stands during intermissions makes speed of service more important for venues than for most stores, restaurants, or taverns. Lavery and his staff considered going cashless but decided against it. My manager spends 5 hours a week counting money and going to the bank. Going cashless would save her time, but we didn't want to penalize our customers who pay in cash. You're listening to a reading of articles from USA Today for Thursday, February 26, 2026, on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. We'll return for more readings after this short break. Your readers today are
Ken Drost
and Jim Duffy.
Listening to this publication online, you're probably using our website, a podcast player like Spotify or iTunes, a streaming service like Siro, or a smart speaker. Did you know that we now have a dedicated app that can be downloaded to any mobile device, like a smartphone or tablet, for free? App users can conveniently access our live stream and any episode of our podcast easier than ever. To download the app, just type NFRRS in the search window in the Apple App Store or in the Google Play Store. Contact us anytime if you have any questions by calling 716-821-5555, extension 5. Thank you.
We will continue now with our reading of articles from today's issue of USA Today. Your readers are
Jim Duffy.
and Ken Drost. Opening with the sports section. Bob Nightingale, columnist for USA Today, writes, Major League Baseball players are geeked about the LA 2028. Mesa, Arizona is the dateline. They screamed and high-fived, ran around, and then the chants began. USA, USA, USA. This was the scene in the Chicago Cubs and the San Francisco Giants clubhouses, along with plenty of others, throughout spring training, the morning of February 22nd. That's the moment Jack Hughes scored the overtime goal to beat Canada for the first men's hockey gold for the USA since 1980, 2 days after the women's gold medal win over Canada. I mean, we're all in here just going crazy, jumping up and down when Hughes scored. I mean, if that doesn't fire you up to play for your country, I don't know what does. This from Cubs All-Star third baseman Alex Bregman, as he told USA Today Sports. New York Mets pitcher Nolan McLean, who is going to pitch for Team USA next week in the World Baseball Classic, echoed Bregman's sentiments, talking to reporters in Port St. Lucie, Florida. Just watching the hockey game, how hard these guys competed for their country, I think that is something that's firing me up even more than I already was. Says Cubs center fielder Pete Crow Armstrong, who also was playing for Team USA in the WBC. Man, we were all in here geeking. It's so cool. Now we get a chance to go for the gold, too. 2 years from now, Major League Baseball hopes to replicate the same emotional scene in the 2028 Summer Olympics in Los Angeles. It is expecting to allow its big league players to participate in the Olympics for the first time in history. I think people have come to appreciate that the Olympics on U.S. soil is a unique marketing opportunity for the game. Commissioner Rob Manfred said earlier in February, I think we've got a lot of players interested in doing it, and I feel pretty good about the idea that we're going to get there. The MLB proposal with Los Angeles 28 organizers must be approved by the Major League Baseball Players Association. But the tentative plan is an extended all-star break, permitting the Major League players to play in the summer games at Dodger Stadium. Major League Baseball still would have an all-star game around its normal date, which likely would be played in San Diego, San Francisco, or Las Vegas. The selected players could then proceed to play in the six-day, six-team Olympic tournament from July 13 through 19. Now, it's also why the WBC, which begins March 5, has greater significance since the top two teams, besides the United States, would automatically qualify to be in the Olympics. The USA gets an automatic berth since it's the hosting country. I think everybody is super fired up for the Olympics after watching the hockey game. Cubs outfielder Matt Shaw said, we had like 60 guys in here watching and yelling. It's such a cool thing. I mean, if there was ever such an opportunity to play in the Olympics, it would be so awesome. Now, right now, the WBC is our Olympics. I love watching that as much as the World Series. But to actually play in the Olympics, wow. MVPs and All-Stars from the Philadelphia Phillies, first baseman Bryce Harper, to LA Dodgers shortstop Mookie Betts, and Phillies DH Kyle Schwarber have been advocating for years for the opportunity to play in the Olympics. Now, after negotiations with the LA 28 organizers, all that remains is the union signing off to finalize their childhood dreams. Representing your country, Harper told reporters in Florida, there's nothing better. The feeling of putting USA on your chest and playing for something so much bigger than yourself, representing your whole country. Nothing greater. says Betts, absolutely, I want to play in the Olympics. It would be an unbelievable honor. Harper and other players on Team USA in the WBC were emotional talking about the hockey gold medal victory, calling it inspirational for their bid to win the gold again after losing to Japan in the 2023 title game. This is our time to represent our country, Schwarber told reporters after the USA's gold medal win. It gives you the motivation, being that we're going to be heading into that and knowing what to expect. Obviously, we're not Olympians, but it's our mini Olympics. The Americans' hockey gold medal games actually reinforced Dodgers manager Dave Roberts' desire to become the USA's Olympic coach. Roberts, the son of a U.S. Marine sergeant, certainly is the natural choice for the USA Games at Dodger Stadium, where he has led the Dodgers to 3 World Series championships. Roberts, who also graduated from UCLA, has international experience as well, representing the U.S. at the 1999 Pan American Games. The tournament helped qualify the USA team for the 2000 Sydney Olympics, where the U.S. won the gold medal with Dodgers Hall of Fame manager Tommy Lasorda. We talk about doing things bigger than yourself, Roberts said, and then being part of something for your country, watching the U.S. hockey team. That was fun for both men and women. So if I do have that opportunity, that would be something I would be very excited about and very humbled. It's just hard to imagine a bigger honor. While players relish playing in the WBC, they didn't grow up watching the WBC. That didn't come into existence until 2006. But virtually everybody grew up watching the Olympics at some juncture of their lives. I mean, I love the Olympics, said Cubs starter Matthew Boyd, who will be playing for the first time in the WBC. I love hockey. Growing up, USA could never beat Canada. They just had such a lineup of dudes. Canada was so superior in the sport. You're always fired up, USA versus Canada. So, I mean, it's very cool that we can go represent our country right after that. That really fires me up. It's so exciting. Schwarber, who will be playing in his second WBC, says the Olympic experience would take it to a different level. We all grew up watching the Olympics and being kids, just tuning into all different kinds of events, Schwarber said. Back in the day, the TV dinners, go get the pull-out trays, sit it on a couch, all the family sitting down at night. We're watching the Olympics. We're watching the gymnasts, the swimming, the diving. Those are all the big ones. I loved watching the sprinters run. It'd be just great for our game in general. Everyone would see it, and it might reach a broader audience than just some countries that are really in tune to it. This will be the third time in Los Angeles that it's hosting the Summer Olympics, the last time, 1984. The Americans finished runner-up in the baseball demonstration tournament, losing to Japan in the championship game. Now that collegiate team, featuring future stars like Hall of Famer Barry Larkin, home run champion Mark McGwire, all-stars Will Clark and Bobby Witt, 13 players from the team were selected in the first round of the 1985 draft. Now, more than 40 years later, Witt's son, Bobby Witt Jr., could be playing in the Olympics as well. He'll be a primary shortstop on the Americans' WBC team this year. It's just so cool representing your country, Witt Jr. said, and you're coming together as one. What's better than that? When Ohtani and Dodgers starter Yoshinobu Yamamoto were asked this spring which meant more to them, winning the World Series for the Dodgers or winning a gold medal for Japan, they said it was impossible to choose. That would be so cool, playing for your country. Dodgers teammate Blake Snell said, that's the ultimate, playing for your country. It'd be way bigger than the WBC. Perhaps Dodgers reliever Jack Dreyer best summed up the feeling by every player dreaming one day to be selected for that 2028 Olympic team. It would be incredible to be an Olympian Dreyer said, I think the only thing more special than playing in the big leagues would be to represent your country. The World Baseball Classic is great, but the Olympics, it's just unreal. Can you imagine?
Seahawks general manager catching up for a reset after Super Bowl 60. From Jarrett Bell, a columnist for USA Today. A Super Bowl parade is one thing, but there's also some type of victory lap to be had at the NFL Scouting Combine for guys like John Schneider. A little more than 2 weeks since winning Super Bowl 60, the Seattle Seahawks general manager can bask in the glory showered by colleagues across the league who can truly appreciate the achievement that they are all hell-bent on grasping, but barely bask. People come up and say congrats and that type of stuff. That's cool, Schneider told USA Today Sports on February 24th. Then there's his next thought, knowing exactly what the purpose of the combine is in the grand scheme of ramping up for another season. Instant reset, Schneider added. It's like a reset. Every year, like, how do we get ready for what's coming? That's the way I view it. Since the convincing beatdown of the New England Patriots, Schneider said he had all of one day off on February 22nd, when he spent the day with his wife Tracy, before traveling to the site of the NFL's annual hub of activity to break down another crop of draft prospects and ramp up for the start of free agency, which officially opens on March the 11th. The week after the Super Bowl, we were in draft meetings, Schneider said, and I wanted to take a picture and send it to my family, like, what a difference a week makes. Last week we were in beautiful sunny California. Now here we are in the draft room. In one sense, catching up is a good problem for Schneider to have about now, and one that 31 other NFL GMs wouldn't mind because they've won the ultimate prize. Sure, the offseason is shorter, but Schneider is quick to point to the work from his supporting staff that, Super Bowl or not, has set the table for what's ahead in the coming weeks. He ripped off some of the names. Nolan Teasley, Assistant General Manager. Matt Berry, VP of Player Acquisition. Trent Kirchner, VP of Player Personnel. And Aaron Highline, a College Scouting Director. And hailed the work of the scouting staff. Everyone's been just killing it, Schneider said. Those guys have crushed the meetings. They've been doing a great job. Now it's about me catching up. He paused, then added, catching up with the private study time. Of course, you could also make the case that Schneider, who also built a team that won the franchise's first Super Bowl crown in 2014, did have another off day when he celebrated during the victory parade in Seattle the Wednesday after the Super Bowl. That's when Schneider made headlines as he addressed the status of Super Bowl MVP Kenneth Walker III, the running back poised to hit the free agent market after playing out his rookie contract. He tried negotiating with me 5 minutes ago, Schneider told the cheering crowd at the celebration. It was really weird. Anyway, hey, MVP. Turns out Schneider was joking about the negotiation, and the joke fell flat. Walker and his new agent, David Cantor, quickly dispelled the narrative. Walker went to Instagram and posted, "Must have been the liquor he was drinking, 'cause I never said that." The MVP added emphasis by completing his IG post with laughing emojis. Asked about it during his February 24th podium session with the media, Schneider also walked back his joke and denied that they talked contract on the day of the parade. "You know, I kind of lost it," Schneider said from the podium. "I got nervous talking in front of those people that day." In any event, Schneider doesn't hesitate to set the record straight. He's hopeful that the Seahawks can strike a deal that keeps Walker in the fold. "We'd love to keep him," Schneider told USA Today Sports. "That's what this week is about, trying to figure out the landscape. I was just so happy for him." Schneider recalled his exchange with Walker during the final minutes of the 29-13 victory, to which Walker contributed 135 rushing yards and 26 receiving yards. "I came down right toward the end of the game, and he was looking up at the scoreboard," Schneider remembered. "I went to him. I was like, 'You're going to be the Super Bowl MVP, man.' He's like, 'Do you really think so?' Like, 'Yeah, I think that's happening, dude.'" Walker is the first running back named since Super Bowl MVP since Terrell Davis in 1998. Now Schneider is pressed to keep Walker, who teamed with Zach Charbonnet for a 1-2 punch throughout the season, then carried the load in the playoffs after Charbonnet went down with a season-ending injury. It could get sticky, given a market that is typically tight for running backs. Walker, who is 25, could be looking at the best negotiating position of his career.
You're listening to a reading of today's USA Today on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time is 1:15.
Continuing, I asked Schneider to summarize his pitch to Walker. Obviously, we want to run it back, he said. We want as many people back as we possibly can. Schneider hopes to make up some ground on that front this week. So no, we're not far along with him yet, Schneider had said, alluding to looming talks with Cantor. That's literally this week. And that's only one of the challenges. Rashid Shaheed, the star receiver returner, is also set to hit the market. Ditto for edge rusher Boy Mafe and cornerbacks Rig Woolen and Josh Joby. These are the problems of champions. Raises are due, which is another way of saying that next year is almost here for Schneider and the Seahawks.
Playing by the rules. A court case outcome reinforcing NCAA eligibility guardrails. Blake Topmeyer, columnist for USA Today Network, writes, court case outcomes are reinforcing. Yeah, let's try that again. We just read that. They asked for this, don't forget. Downright begged for it, even. University leaders, conference commissioners, coaches, all of them. They wanted, they craved guardrails. Gotta have those guardrails. Can't behave themselves without guardrails. Apparently the folks at NCAA headquarters were listening. They've heeded the call to action with a feverish push to enforce the association's membership-approved eligibility rules that impede eighth-year senior quarterbacks and prohibit ex-college basketball players from returning to college after 3 years in the NBA G League. A strange thing is happening too. Now, rules are enjoying a renaissance. The NCAA is winning in court. Now, that's what I call an upset. In recent weeks, the NCAA prevailed in 2 out of 3 court decisions in high-profile eligibility cases. Ole Miss quarterback Trinidad Chambly scored the lone win against the NCAA when a judge determined the NCAA improperly denied Chambly's a medical redshirt for one of his years at Division II Ferris State. This court ruling will allow Chambly's a 6th season. The NCAA, though, prevailed in eligibility cases brought by Tennessee's forever a student Joey Aguilar and pro basketball player turned Alabama basketball player Charles Bediako. Now, for those keeping score at home, the 2-1 score counts as a hard-fought best-of-3 series victory for the NCAA. Reports of the NCAA's imminent demise were premature. If the universities and coaches affected by this decision doesn't like it, just remember, you all asked for this. You wanted rules. Well, here they are, your precious guardrails. No crying when the rules work against you. The NCAA scores an upset road win in the case brought by Tennessee's quarterback Joey Aguilar. Now, the NCAA won these rulings as a road underdog as well. A Knoxville, Tennessee judge, who calls UT his alma mater, ruled in favor of the NCAA and against Aguilar last week. The judge denied his quest for a 4th season of football bowl subdivision eligibility after he previously spent 4 years in junior college. NCAA rules. Remember those old things? Say an athlete has got 5 years to play 4 seasons. no matter whether he spends some of his time in JUCO. Being a college quarterback in perpetuity is good work if you can get it, so I don't blame Aguilar for shooting his shot in court. Another season would have generated millions for him in a name, image, and likeness through an NIL payout. Now, just one problem. NCAA rules inhibit Aguilar's desires to never leave college sports, and the guardrails held up in this case. Hometown judge Chris Haggerty might have cost his alma mater a win or two next fall when he ruled against Aguilar. A big win for guardrails, and a triumph for Johnny Law against Joey, quarterback within the wild, wild west of college sports. Now, the Vols coach, Josh Heupel, had supported Aguilar's bid for another season because, coaches pine for guardrails up to the point that their team stands to benefit from an eighth-year senior quarterback. Alas, no luck for Heupel, Aguilar, or Tennessee. The NCAA celebrated the judge's ruling as if it scored an upset against a ranked opponent. We are going to continue to defend the eligibility rules, the NCAA announced in a triumphant statement. To support his ruling, the judge used language people with a Juris Doctorate would understand. Now, here's the upshot in layman's terms. Aguilar already played 5 college seasons. He spent 2 additional years on JUCO rosters as redshirt and COVID years. NCAA eligibility rules being what they are, it's finally time for Aguilar to go pro in something other than college sports. Now, this wasn't just a victory for the NCAA and the gotta have some rules crowd. It's also a win for George McIntyre, a redshirt freshman who now moves to the head of the line in Tennessee's quarterback competition. Regarding Chris Bediako, as he renews a dream to be an ex-pro basketball player. While Aguilar turns his attention to the NFL scouting combine, Bediako refuses to take the L. He's appealing to the Alabama Supreme Court in his quest to play college basketball 3 years after he decided he wanted to be a pro basketball player instead of staying in college. As Bediako toiled in the G League, he saw the light that the bliss of college combined with NIL riches yields the good life. Nate Oates has thrown his steadfast support behind Bediako because guardrails are great in theory, but here in reality, a win-at-all-costs coach needs a big man with pro experience to fuel his team's March Madness run. The system's clearly broken, Oates said in support of Bediako's college comeback, and if I'm all for figuring out a way to fix it. That loosely translates to, the system is not perfect, and I will do whatever I can to take advantage and worm my way through the system's cracks. Hey, that's the job. Not too bad for Alabama. The NCAA took its membership seriously when coaches and administrators hollered en masse they wanted guardrails and rules enforcement. Now, don't mistake these courtroom wins as the NCAA becoming a judicial system juggernaut or a sweeping roadblock to future lawsuits. Sure as lawyers make their living off billable hours, the NCAA's rules and its attempts to enforce them are going to be challenged in court. For a moment, though, the beleaguered NCAA can celebrate a couple of wins. A few guardrails still stand within the OK corral of college sports. That's what everybody said they wanted, right?
Surgeries slow rising star Zalatoris, from Tom D'Angelo of the Palm Beach, Florida Post and the USA Today Network. No medical books will cite the analogy Will Zalatoris uses when trying to describe what was happening with his back. Unless, of course, that author is obsessed with Jenga? Zalatoris is rehabbing his mind, body, and game after requiring 2 years to repair a back that was like someone's more than twice his age. The 29-year-old, who was a breakout star in the PGA Tour 4 years ago, compared his back to a Jenga tower and the discs that stabilized his spine to Jenga blocks. That first surgery, he said about a microdiscectomy in April of 2023, in which damaged discs were removed, was like taking a Jenga piece that's broken out of a Jenga tower. Even though there's a broken piece taken away, the integrity of the tower is still not the same. Then late in the spring of last year, after luckily nothing collapsed, those Jenga pieces or discs were replaced by fake discs to make the tower sturdier and able to withstand the daily grind that a professional golfer puts his back through. That final mix came about 9 months ago. Now the one-time world top 10 player and FedEx Cup points leader after the first leg for the 2022 playoffs is playing pain-free. It's great, Zalatoris said following his Pro-Am round before the Cognizant Classic in the Palm Beaches, because I'm able to go week in, week out, and now it's just about executing. Zalatoris knows something about executing. The one-time number 7 in the world and 2-time major champion runner-up is starting over with a rebuilt back that includes sturdy Jenga pieces on his L4 through L5 and L5S1 vertebrae. The confidence that comes with a pain-free swing, that, by the way, is a little bit longer. The replacement made Zalatoris 3/4 of an inch taller. He now stands exactly 6'2" on the dot, he said, but it's how that 6'2" frame is holding up that excites Zalatoris. I think the part that's fun about this now is the 3 years of kind of going through all of this is over, he said. The sciatica, the league weakness, like I haven't had any of that. The difference now is that I can do the things I've needed to do. Physically, I wasn't capable of doing those things. And so there would even be times where I'd play a couple of weeks and I'd have to take a full week off. Zalatoris' 2023 season ended with the microdiscectomy, which came after withdrawing from the Masters. The next year, he played a full schedule. He was runner-up at the Genesis T4 at the Arnold Palmer Invitational and had a top 10 at the Masters, but he was never right. That led to the final procedure, which put as much a mental strain on Zalatoris as physical. You go through it once, that's fine. Hey, I'm still a great player. I've had a couple of great finishes, a top 10 in a major, he said. But then you go through it again, and that's where the mental side of it is very hard. Now he's in the untorquing phase of his career. That is how he describes what is happening with his swing. Basically, everything we're doing is trying to untorque my back, said Zalatoris, who uses the swings of Tiger Woods and Patrick Cantlay as comparisons. Woods had a microdiscectomy among his many back procedures, and Cantlay suffered a stress fracture in his L5 vertebrae in 2013, which sidelined him for nearly 3 years. Justin Thomas had a microdiscectomy about 4 months ago and will return March the 5th at the Arnold Palmer Invitational. Zalatoris, the San Francisco native who graduated from Wake Forest, also is talking to players on the PGA Tour Champions, the 50 and older tour. I'm picking their brains on since they've gone through more back stuff, he said. Zalatoris made his return to competitive PGA Tour golf at the American Express in January. He finished 18th. A week later, he missed the cut at the Farmers. He hopes to start building those points to one day get back into majors and play in the tour's signature events. And he believes his champion course, the champion course at the PGA National is a good place to do that. Zalatoris, who is playing in a grouping with Brooks Koepka and Daniel Berger in the first round, played PGA National more than once while in junior golf. I always loved this event, said Zalatoris, who is an elite ball striker, especially with his irons. It was just the timing of coming from the West Coast to the East Coast and me born on the West Coast. Strictly was how the schedule lays out. This is a tough course. It's a ball striker's paradise, and this is a place that you know I've been wanting to come to for a long time, and now it's fun to come back, and 15 years later, full circle for me.
You're listening to a reading of today's USA Today on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time is 1:30. And moving on to hockey. Trade deadline approaches as the NHL resumes. Mike Brame of USA Today writes a rather brief article. The 2026 Winter Olympics are over. The U.S. won its first men's hockey gold medal since 1980, and now Olympians are rejoining their NHL teams for the stretch. The league started up again February 25, and NHL games are going to be played for the first time since February the 5th. The Detroit Red Wings, Pittsburgh Penguins, New York Islanders, Buffalo Sabres, Boston Bruins, Seattle Kraken, Utah Mammoth, and Anaheim Ducks sit in a playoff position after missing the postseason in 2024-25. The trade deadline is just around the corner, and the rush to a playoff berth is on before the regular season ends officially April 16. So here's a look at key questions as the regular season resumes. Is the trade deadline going to be busy? The date is March 6, so teams don't have a lot of time to work something out. There was a major trade right before the Olympic freeze when the New York Rangers moved Artemi Panarin to the LA Kings. Once the freeze lifted, the Colorado Avalanche traded defenseman Samuel Girard to the Penguins for Brett Kulak on February 24. So there's an opportunity for more trades because there's a gap between the haves and the have-nots, and top teams have needs. The last place Vancouver Canucks, who already moved Quinn Hughes and Kiefer Sherwood, have Evander Kane and Teddy Bluegrass pending free agency. The Rangers could move Vince Trocheck. Calgary Flames center Nazem Kadri would be coveted, and the Blues could be sellers. So, are the Panthers going to keep their Stanley Cup hopes alive? The Florida Panthers won the last two Stanley Cup titles, went to the final the year before that, and were President Trophy winners in 2021 and 22. But that string of success suffered a serious blow when captain and Selke Trophy winner Alexander Barkov needed ACL surgery after being injured on his first day of practice in September. They're also missing defenseman Dmitry Kulikov and Seth Jones, and sit in last place in the Atlantic Division with 61 points, 8 points out of a playoff spot. The good news is Matthew Tkachuk returned before the break, and Jones is skating with a non-contact jersey. Bill Zito is a creative general manager, and Paul Maurice, top-notch coach. They have 25 games to make up those points, which is possible if they come out strong after this break. As they showed the last 3 years, if they make it into the postseason, they can go far. Now, can the Sabres end their playoff drought? Their 14 years out of the playoffs is an NHL record. It looked like it might reach 15 when they started slowly this year, or this season. But things turned around when they fired general manager Kevin Adams and promoted Jarmo Kekalainen. Then they pushed a winning streak to 10 games and now sit in the first wildcard spot in the Eastern Conference. But they lost 3 out of 4 heading into the break, and they're going to need to remedy that, especially when they will be facing the Lightning, the Golden Knights, 2 times each in the next 11 games. Can the Red Wings end their playoff drought? They haven't made the playoffs in 9 years and are sitting in third in the tough Atlantic Division. Other teams have a game or more in hand, but their goaltending is better than in the past because of John Gibson and they have plenty of cap space to make a move at the deadline. Now, can the Kings overcome the loss of Kevin Fiala? Now, Fiala broke his leg while playing for Switzerland at the Olympics. He had surgery, and he's going to miss the rest of the regular season. The Kings have Panarin now, but his acquisition was designed to boost an offense that had Fiala in the lineup. Now, Fiala leads the Kings with 17 power play points. Los Angeles, 3 points out of a playoff spot. So they may need to make another trade.
Hela Busek to receive Presidential Medal of Freedom from Mark Giannotto of USA Today. Most of the United States Olympic men's hockey team walked into the House chamber at the U.S. Capitol on February 24th to a standing ovation and chants of USA during President Trump's State of the Union address. The players wore their gold medals, won 2 days earlier in overtime in a thrilling final game against Canada to close out the 2026 Milan Cortina Winter Olympics, and then Trump singled out one member of the team in particular. Hours earlier, when the U.S. team visited with Trump in the Oval Office during its White House visit, the president said he took an informal poll of the players regarding their teammate, goalie Connor Hellebuyck. Based on their vote and my vote, and in this case my vote was more important, I will soon be presenting Connor with our highest civilian honor, the Presidential Medal of Freedom, Trump told the nation during his State of the Union speech as the U.S. players stood above him in the gallery. Hellebuyck isn't the first prominent American athlete or Olympian to receive this distinction, but he's joining a select list of accomplished sports figures to be recognized with this honor by a sitting president. The reasoning behind Hellebuyck's Presidential Medal of Freedom appears to be straightforward. He played awesome in the Milan Cortina Olympics gold medal game, saving 41 of the 42 shots he faced to hold Canada until the Americans pounced for a goal less than 2 minutes into overtime. I've never seen a goaltender play as well as goalie Connor Hellebuyck, Trump declared in his State of the Union address, before revealing the honor he had elected to give Hellebuyck. Trump said every member of the team in the Oval Office voted in favor of Hellebuyck receiving the Presidential Medal of Freedom. He also asked him about his most memorable save on Canadian Devon Toews during the second period of the gold medal game. The one shot, the one where you put your stick in the back and it hit the neck of your stick and bounced off, Trump said in front of Congress. Do you practice that, or was that a little lucky? Trump then asked. He refused to answer that question. Between 1963 and 2025, the Presidential Medal of Freedom was awarded 674 times to 671 individuals and one group, the Apollo 13 Mission Operations Team, according to the U.S. Congress. Hellebuyck joins an illustrious list of athletes and those from the sports world to have been given the Presidential Medal of Freedom for their accomplishments over the years. Trump has previously awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom to Boston Celtics legend Bob Cousy, longtime Iowa wrestling coach and Olympic champion Dan Gable, college football coach Lou Holtz, former New York Yankees pitcher Mariano Rivera, auto racing owner and driver Roger Penske, golfers Tiger Woods, Annika Sorenstrom and Gary Player, track and field athlete Mildred Didrikson Zaharis, and 1963 Heisman Trophy winner Dallas Cowboy quarterback Roger Staubach. Simone Biles, Magic Johnson, Katie Ledecky, Michael Jordan, Lionel Messi, Reagan Rapinoe, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Ernie Banks, Billie Jean King, Willie Mays, Yogi Berra, Hank Aaron, Muhammad Ali, Bill Russell, Stan Musial, Babe Ruth, Jim Thorpe, Dean Smith, Pat Summitt, Roberto Clemente, Arthur Ashe, Frank Robinson, and Jackie Robinson are also among the recipients in recent decades. Hellebuyck is a 32-year-old Commerce, Michigan native and the goaltender for the Winnipeg Jets of the NHL. He has won the Vezina Trophy 3 times as the NHL's best goaltender. He also won the Hart Trophy as the NHL's MVP for the 24-25 season. After finishing with a 47-12-3 record and setting career best marks on goals against average, 2.0, and save percentage at .925. He played college hockey at UMass Lowell and was a fifth-round pick by Winnipeg in the 2012 NHL entry draft. He made his NHL debut during the 2015-16 season. Hellebuck has a 13-16-7 record, 2.79 goals against average, and .900 save percentage for the Jets this season.
Peyton relinquishes play calling duties. Jarrett Bell of USA Today writes, Sean Payton is still the undisputed shot caller for the Denver Broncos, but play caller, that's an entirely different story. He's turning over play calling duties to newly promoted offensive coordinator Davis Webb, confirming the move during his media session February 24 at the NFL Scouting Combine. I think he'll be really good at it, Payton said of Webb, who joined the Broncos staff as quarterbacks coach in 2023. I know that's like, man, you're going to give up play calling? I would only do that if I felt it would help our team. Webb, who's 31, is a rising star in the coaching ranks who drew interest from multiple teams during the hiring cycle. But still, now Payton has called plays for at least the last 18 years when considering his 15-year tenure as head coach of the New Orleans Saints, and before that, assistant head coach, quarterbacks coach for the Dallas Cowboys. Now this move comes weeks after the Broncos lost to the New England Patriots in the AFC Championship game, the result marred by Payton's decision that backfired when a 4th-and-1 play failed after he bypassed a short field goal attempt. Payton didn't link the move to the AFC title game and insisted it was not influenced by any ultimatum from Webb. Regardless, it's a stunning record when considering Payton's track record as one of the NFL's most accomplished offensive minds. I'd still be involved with what we do offensively, but like we do defensively, he said. But I do think he has a gift. I think he's real sharp. Payton's announcement came hours after Buffalo Bills GM Brandon Beane intimated the switch when asked about his team's pursuit of Webb. New Bills coach Joe Brady, who broke into the NFL coaching ranks on Payton's staff with the Saints, also alluded to Webb's new play calling opportunity. I know Brandon Beane announced it earlier to the media, Payton said, so I saw him in the hallways. I thought, you can come on and do my presser too. But no, I'm excited for him having that opportunity.
Returning to the front section of USA Today for this article, celebrity deaths put focus on health anxiety. Dane Vanderbeek losses prompt lessons from Rachel Hale of USA Today. Many TV fans are reeling from the shock of 2 celebrity deaths back to back. Within days, fans said goodbye to Dawson Creek star James Van Der Beek and Eric Dane of Grey's Anatomy. And both stars died before ever seeing the age of 55 and after battling devastating illnesses. Van Der Beek died less than 3 years after he was diagnosed with stage 3 colorectal cancer, and Dane had been living with ALS. Both continued to work in Hollywood as they fought their illnesses. Van Der Beek was 48 and Dane was 53. Celebrity deaths can feel personal, even if you never met the person. And while grief is different for everyone, experts say collective grief can intensify when a public figure is mourned. When a death is tied to a serious illness, there also is often another layer, heightened health anxiety. Parts of these stars' stories unfolded on social media, making fans feel closer to them. The families of Van Der Beek and Dane made posts on their Instagram accounts announcing their deaths. Notably, family and friends created GoFundMe pages to support the stars' loved ones. Fans and industry colleagues helped raise more than $2.7 million and $338,000 respectively. Experts say the collective or public grief is a valid experience and can be a normal part of grieving. However, it can turn problematic when that shared experience leads to someone worrying more about their own health and mortality. The efforts to raise money for these well-known figures can also spark complicated feelings about one's medical and financial securities. For fans, there's genuine fear that comes with seeing public figures struggle with health issues. If high-profile celebrities who we presume have the best access to care are dying of illnesses, what does that mean for the everyday American? Colorectal cancer is one of 17 cancers rising for the Gen X and millennials, the American Cancer Society says. And ALS, or Lou Gehrig's disease, is a degenerative disease that can affect the brain and spinal cord. A cure has not been found. It's typical to feel a bit worried about your health, but those concerns evolve into health anxiety if someone begins to experience an excessive preoccupation with developing a serious illness, says Sherry Turner, Chief Health Officer at Crisis Text Line. When you see celebrities go through something like this, it makes us feel very vulnerable, right?
You're listening to a reading of today's USA Today on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time is 1:45.
Continuing, how to manage health anxiety. First, know you're not alone. Give yourself permission to feel sad, Turner says. People were very invested in these shows for many years. Acknowledge it, allow yourself to grieve, but don't spiral into it. Control what you can. Turner says staying up to date on news about health and going to checkups is productive, along with diet and exercise. Curb your Googling. Turner suggests avoiding self-diagnosis through the internet. Turn to healthy distractions. That can include meditation, breathing exercises, and physical exercise. And finally, seek professional help. If someone has gone to doctors repeatedly and doctors have not found a medical diagnosis and they're continuing to worry, Turner says, it's time to seek help.
Moving into the life section. A streaming article, Paradise Found in a Mansion Fit for the King. The article by Kelly Lawler and Wendy Naugel, USA Today writers. Paradise gets down in the jungle room in season 2. The sophomore season of Hulu's Emmy-nominated series expands in a major way as Sterling K. Brown's Xavier explores the brave new world outside the not-so-utopian bunker that was the setting for season 1 of the drama. The sci-fi series takes place in a world in which the population has been mostly decimated by an apocalyptic natural disaster, except for the lucky few who made it into a bunker built for wealthy elites. But for this new batch of episodes, Paradise jumps out of the bunker and right into Graceland. Yeah, that Graceland. Filled with new faces, including Divergent star Shailene Woodley. The new season of Paradise is bigger, more complex, and even more relevant than ever. Speaking with USA Today, the cast previewed what you can expect in the exciting new season. Graceland ain't bad for the apocalypse. Our first taste of what happened on the surface after the show's supervolcano and all the weather and man-made catastrophes that follows Annie, played by Shailene Woodley, a med school dropout turned Graceland tour guide who makes her own personal sanctuary during the tumult in Elvis Presley's legendary home and tourist attraction. It was pretty much square inch to square inch replica of Graceland itself, says Woodley, whose Annie is seen huddling against the ice age-like winter caused by the volcano in the King's Firs, reading by the light of novelty Elvis candles, and sleeping in a recreation of that iconic jungle room the mansion is known for. The theme park-like aesthetic adds to the unreality of Annie's situation, living mostly in solitary confinement for the years after the world ended. The interior design of Graceland is not common, she jokes. Graceland was a big character. Now, Woodley's Annie is among several new faces for Paradise, joining such veteran cast members as Brown, Julianne Nicholson, and James Marsden. Thomas Doherty, of Tell Me Lies fame, also joins as Link, a mysteriously knowledgeable and powerful figure on the surface, intent on finding the bunker for more than just its resources and protection. Both actors were welcomed by the close-knit cast. Shailene was wonderful, Brown says. She's a warm, real person. There are people who have been in Los Angeles for a certain amount of time that they feel like they have like a little bit of gloss on them. She's just real people. Someone that I have looked up to for my whole career is Shailene. To be able to work with her, to get to know her, just fall in love with her as a person, that was really special, says Doherty, whose character happens to fall in love with Annie in the season's first episode, set entirely from Annie's point of view. The pair have an amorous meeting that will have consequences for the rest of the season. Now, it's always quite nerve-wracking, Doherty says, of filming Link and Annie's most intimate scene. That level of intimacy with someone that you look up to and admire so much. I think it was beneficial that we weren't as familiar with each other when we shot it. Although the surface is dangerous and hellish, down in the bunker things aren't going smoothly either. Nicholson's Samantha Redmond, also known as Sinatra, was critically wounded by her pet psychopath, Jane, played by Nicole Bryden Bloom, in the season 1 final. Sinatra may be down, but don't count her out, Nicholson says. She starts season 2 from a place of vulnerability, the actress tells USA Today, and while she pretty quickly finds her way back on top, she needs to work even harder to protect her family and protect the citizens of Paradise. The season also brings back Marsden, whose boyish President Cal Bradford dies in season 1, for occasional flashbacks, along with Billy, played by John Beavers, another victim of the terrifying Jane. The themes of money, power, corruption, and sacrifice remain as the show's universe gets more complex and the layers of the mystery of the bunker are peeled back even further. Brown can't reveal too much about what's to come, but he's happy to tease fans. Mammoth. It's Mammoth, he says of the season finale. The show may be post-apocalyptic science fiction, but the cast sees parallels with the scary realities of the real world. People have been building bunkers, Brown says. Some sound like there's possibilities of actual government projects to fund, underground communities and so forth. Possibly real, possibly not. You don't know. But it doesn't seem as far-fetched as it once did. It also just seems that there's a nasty entanglement of business and politics, and that we are in service of the people that finance our campaigns rather than in service of an electorate. It was not our intention, and we were not trying to reflect anything back at our audiences, but it would be hard not to see the similarities, Nicholson says. I mean, I question deeply with each passing day right now. With the billionaires and the firings and AI, it's all definitely in the front of my mind.
Rinna talks the talk and gets real about TV. From David Oliver of USA Today. Lisa Rinna's lips were made for talking, but on a recent day in Los Angeles, her lips were not her main focus. She's on her way to the dentist. It's very glamorous today, she jokes, to get a new mouth guard made after her dog chewed up hers. Yes, the Traitors contestant and former Real Housewives of Beverly Hills star grinds her teeth. Celebrities, they're just like us. You learn plenty about the inner workings of all things Rinna, as her Housewives castmates fondly called her, in her new memoir. You better believe I'm going to talk about it, from Day Street Books, out February 24th. For a book she didn't want to write in the first place, Her team pushed for it, she says. She leaves nary a stone unturned. She writes about her childhood in Oregon, her parenting of daughters Amelia, 24, and Delilah, 27, with husband Harry Hamlin, her acting and modeling careers, and of course, reality TV. I don't think anyone owes anybody any explanation about anything unless they want to talk about it, she says. So that's one reason why I wrote this book. I thought it's really great to tell my side of the story. Say how I feel, how I felt, what my opinion is. You can feel and think however you want. But this is my book, and my opinion and my feelings. Rinna shatters the reality TV illusion that cameras just happen to be there when crazy events go down. The iconic Real Housewives scene in Amsterdam, where Rinna breaks a glass after fellow housewife Kim Richards insinuates Rinna's husband is hiding a secret. A producer engineered it. It's something reality TV fans could guess, though there's something harsh about reading it on the page. It was real in the moment, certainly, you know, but like all those things, they're usually triggered by a producer whispering in someone's ear, unfortunately.
You've been listening to a reading of USA Today for Thursday, February the 26th, 2026. We read USA Today weekdays at noon. For more information, call 821-5555. That's in the 716 area code. Your readers today,
Jim Duffy
and Ken Trost.
If you or people you know shop at any of the Dash's supermarkets, please save Dash's register tapes for radio reading. Our agency receives $2 for every $100 in Dash's register tapes. Radio Reading has raised thousands of dollars so far. Anyone can drop off their Dash's tapes to the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service at 1199 Harlem Road, Cheektowaga, between William and Clinton Streets. Or Dash's tapes can be mailed to the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service at 1199 Harlem Road, Cheektowaga, New York, 14227. Any questions on Dash's tapes for radio reading? Call us at 716-821-5555, and thanks for caring. Radio Reading mails out a large print program schedule to our listeners every other month. If you have not received a Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service large print program schedule in the mail, please call us at 716-821-5555. We will make sure that you receive one every other month. A Braille version of the schedule is also available upon request. Our number again is 716-821-5555. is intended for listeners who are blind, have low vision, or have another